kind of step. So, all right. So the college football season this upcoming year is going to be really, really something else. 12-team playoff, Big Ten getting more teams, more programs involved. I'm really curious and interested to see how USC really pans out in this. So to really talk about it and focus in on the Ohio State Buckeyes, got a real good friend of mine here, Jay Stevens, Locked On Buckeyes. So what we got last year with the fact that Michigan wins it all, and like I said, they were on a mission. Jim Harbaugh, it clearly can win in both collegiate and in the NFL. But I think the big thing is the Big Ten with the programs that they're getting in for this next up and coming college season. I mean, this is going to be bigger and better than ever. I mean, SC against Ohio State, you're getting a couple you got Michigan State, you got Iowa, you got a lot of teams. How does the Big Ten really kind of favor out on this with this new up and coming season with all the changes being made?
The same way it has been for quite a long time. It's heavy at the top. You got some guys there in the middle, and then everybody else is trying to fit in where they can at the bottom. It's still going to be Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. When you add in the guys from the West Coast that are coming in, added to the Big Ten, outside of Oregon, I don't really look at anybody else as a contender in the Big Ten to win the conference this year. I understand USC as a brand that is not where they used to be, a brand that's not where they want to be, and I am not a big fan of what Lincoln Riley is currently doing right now. I know he can change it over the next couple of years, but I just don't think that Lincoln Riley is a guy to instantly make USC, at least right now this season, a contender in the Big Ten. But to me, it's Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Oregon. That's the top four. And then you got the next group is, I'll put USC in there. USC, Washington, Iowa, Wisconsin, maybe Michigan State. But the fact that I'm putting USC in with Iowa and Wisconsin lets everyone know where they currently sit right now. They're not at the top, and they could literally have the same record as Iowa. That team that always has an atrocious offense, one of the best defenses in the country, is right there with USC in the Big Ten as far as where they stand right now, as far as not being a part of the elite group. That's it. It's pretty shocking, but I do think right now with the Big Ten, it has to go through Ohio State or it's weird to say Oregon's in the Big Ten. I'm still getting used to that. But I still think it's Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, with Michigan being on the outside of that grouping or the last team there. Because they could easily be an 8-4 team, a 7-5 team at the end of the regular season.
I mean, it's kind of funny. And as a fellow colleague that basically covers the Big Ten as a whole, we can admit this conference brings a lot of physicality. Mm-hmm. Because I mean, you watch any given Saturday when I'm out there watching, college, noon every time. Whenever I get Wisconsin or I get Iowa or I get any of those, basically quote unquote corn-fed teams that I know are going to be physical, they're going to play hard. USC, I mean, again, I can respect Lincoln Riley's his genius ability on offense and what he's produced over the years, but he has not been able to take that next step to build a great defense. Do you think that really does hinder it down to where if I'm Lincoln, I got to have somebody that I know for a fact can shape up USC's defense, could go out there and recruit potential, high schoolers that I know that can come in and maybe want to play in a big program, but maybe look more in the bigger picture, not just looking at, well, I'm just there to try to basically build my next top 10 NFL draftee prospect up out there that's mostly up on offense. I mean, that's kind of fair to say. You got to have a balance between the two, right?
Yeah, you hit that word. It's an R word. It's recruit. One thing someone said recently about Ohio State, and I was listening to a different show, and they said Ohio State recruits like an SEC school, which is true. And when I view Ohio State recruiting, there's a reason why they go after the players that they do, the guys that are top 5 in their position group. Hey, if they're local Midwest kids, they're going to go after them. Ohio kids are going to go after them. Florida, South Florida, they're going to go after them. Oh, if you're a good offensive lineman in Colorado, they're going to pursue you. Why? Because if you're one of the best in your position and you fit what Ohio State is looking for at that position, they're going to go after you. Well, USC right now has not recruited like they did under Pete Carroll. And even at the latter part of Pete Carroll, he wasn't recruiting like he did during the best peak times of that Trojan period when he was the head coach. USC is not recruiting like an SEC school. They don't recruit like Alabama. They don't recruit like Georgia. They don't recruit like Ohio State. I even say they don't recruit like Michigan. And Michigan in that grouping is still in the back part of that as far as recruiting and even the development of talent. So for USC to really be better, they have to recruit better. You're in California. Mm-hmm. You don't have to go that far to get a top guys or elite guys at every position. One of the rare schools of colleges around the country that you don't have to really hit the airport to recruit elite quarterbacks, elite running backs. You can hop in your car, drive, and figure all that whole thing out. Now, you still got to go outside of California, outside of LA to be able to recruit all the players you need. But you can just do it there. But for some reason, they're literally losing guys in California to Ohio State. And I believe Olave and Stroud, I believe those are two West Coast kids. And so you may say, Jay, why are they not getting them? Because Ohio State, for example, is recruiting at a higher level. They're developing at a higher level. And USC has not been able to find the right coach and coaching staff to get the thing right. Lincoln Riley can get that offense right. But if he can't bring that level of physicality, not just on defense, but on offense, if they can't win the battle in the trenches, you're looking at a team that's consistently 8-4, maybe 9-3, on the high end 10-2. Penn State's a very physical team, more physical than USC, but they are religiously a 10-2 football team. Under James Franklin, he's made millions of dollars with that record being the thing you expect. So for USC to get to the top, they got to recruit better. But it's hard, very, very hard when you go to a new conference and you have to recruit not just your area, but also, you're going to have more Big Ten teams trying to get guys in Cali as well.
Yeah, and it's very true because especially when you're thinking about the West Coast, because, I mean, you're talking about kids that are coming out of that California region. And, I mean, I watch CIF football as well, and they do produce a lot of really good prospects that come in. They're going from a lot of regions. I mean, they're either going out to Eugene, going up there to Dan Lanning's process, and then Ohio State, and even Penn State. Some of these kids are going up into that cold about there. And so it's like, you really have to sharpen and really just be better with pitching the product to where these kids want to be able to play not only just in this program, but even when, again, being smart in the books when it comes to being there and, at the college campus and such. I mean, that's the important part. But what's kind of interesting about this, because like I said, the Big 12, SEC, and the Big 10 all together from all the Power 5 conferences. With this whole, this realignment, and unfortunately with the death of the Pac-12, this is really going to be interesting for a lot of college football fans for a lot of those reasons. Yes, the matchups are going to be bigger and better than ever, but and the conversation is, to be honest, when you think of schedules, everybody's thinking like, why would USC even be wanting to play Notre Dame for that reason? If you've already got Penn State and you've already got all these other teams in the Big Ten, why even throw that up in there? So I guess the alignment, it's really going to shake up a lot of stuff. But I think this is what's going to make the college football season even bigger and better, and where I think, the ratings are going to go up. But I also do think that the builds of all of the potential prospects coming in, it's going to be a lot better. And I think we might see a next wave at some point coming into the NFL draft soon.
Next wave of, speaking of expansion?
Yeah, maybe more of the expansion, and even more of just, the prospects, the products, what you're building up to being potential next top 10, top 15 players.
Yeah, the prospects, they will be. The expansion itself, because you touched on a lot of stuff there. The expansion itself, I think it's going to continue. And then whenever they get to the College Football Super League, whenever that will happen, you're going to have to find somebody to govern it and rule it. Because if you don't, if you have the similar format as now, where it's not the same conferences, but you're still having 10 or 8 different conferences in general with 10 teams in it, you're going to find the same thing. You're going to have the Big Ten having their TV deals with certain Big Ten, whatever Big Ten Midwest Conference that is called. You're going to have those TV deals, and then you're going to have these other TV deals. It's still going to be the same mess that we're currently in right now, and I'm not a big fan of it. It's very confusing. The fact that the Big Ten has all these eyeballs on CBS and Fox and NBC. I literally missed when ABC was a spot where Ohio State had 5 or 6 games in the evening every single year. It was almost like, hey, who does Ohio State play? Penn State, cool, whiteout. Let's go to Happy Valley. Let's make that thing happen. But now it's no. Well, you got this, you got Fox, but it's hard to predict where things are going to go. But for the the prospects themselves, the Big Ten's going to have a lot more players, a lot better players at the top because of the teams and the way they recruit. I'm going to go back to something I said earlier. I still don't believe the Big Ten is going to be the SEC as far as the prospects and products and even the teams. Yeah. To me, the SEC is still the best football conference in America. The Big Ten is still number 2 consistently. And I think in the draft, you're still going to find more SEC players drafted than Big Ten players. That's even a weird thing to say because the Big Ten has 2 more teams than the SEC does. But, buddy, the bottom of the Big Ten does not really produce that really, like a lot of really good players. It does not. It's really one of the laughable things about the conference that it's so bad at the bottom. I mean, now there's not like 3 or 4 or 5 Vanderbilts. I'm not going that far, but they're not that. And so the products are going to be better, probably better quarterback play, better running back play, all of that stuff. But, man, the expansion, it's confusing. The TV stuff is confusing. But the Big Ten will have better players just by the fact that they're going to have more big brands in the conference.
Yeah, and it's like I said, and I've been kind of screaming it now for the last couple of years, is like college football just needs a CEO that could at least structurize this whole thing. Because when it comes to, schedules, when it comes to, the television ratings and TV deals, and at the same time, like something that's got to, at the very least, make it make sense. Find the silver lining that can make this right. Because again, there are many big time college football fans that love college football play. Mm-hmm. I mean, good God, we're getting college football video game back now, finally, after all these years. So it's like the huge picture is starting to get bigger and better, but we got to at the very least make it more structurized and consistent so that way, because again, I get sick and tired of it every time when I look at certain schedules, and then there is a lot of these big time schools that are playing, like a Panera Bread or a roast beef tech, type schools. Like, what in the hell? Why are we playing these cupcake games? We need to find more competitive. We need to have an even balanced schedule where you're now being tested of who's got the top 10 best programs all together, from recruiting to the coaching and to basically the program as a whole. That's what I would love to see at some point. One thing before we finally tap into Ohio State is, so I know we talked about USC and we know we got UCLA coming in, but I just feel like the other 2 that are coming in, Oregon and Washington, Jed Fish and Dan Lanning. I just feel like with these coaches, I think they could definitely make it in this conference for a few reasons, because I think Dan Lanning's his product he's built at Oregon for the last few years. The offenses has gotten better. I think he has produced a couple players here and there up on defense, but could use some improvement. And last year, you're coming off of a national championship appearance with Washington when they had Kalen DeBoer. Now it's a change of scenery. They lost a lot of players due to the draft. And so it might take a bit, but how do you kind of really see from the outside looking in with these other 2 programs up in the Pacific Northwest and more into Eugene?
With these 2 programs, to me, I think Washington does not get the attention it deserves for the type of football program that it is. Now, a lot of people don't realize there was a time that Washington did win a national championship. That was decades ago. And so if you're saying, Jay, they did that, well, Google it, Wikipedia, you'll find all that good stuff there. Because I've literally done this on my free time. I've been that nerd that goes, well, this guy won the Heisman at this school. This school's not producing that anymore. What did he do? And then I go to YouTube to watch all the plays. I'm like, oh, okay, this is why he won that trophy. So Washington's one of the schools that is really, really good, but I think it's going to be, they have a chance to be in that top group at the Big Ten. Now, the number of that top group can expand. I think I mentioned earlier, initially it'll be Oregon, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State will be the top four. Now, you can get 5 or 6 guys that are the elite, 5 or 6 teams that are the top or the elite, but it's going to be hard to crack that if you don't play a physical brand of football. In comes Oregon. Oregon does that. Oregon has a really good quarterback. Oregon has a really good coach. So they have things that can make them at the top. In October, I think it's October 12th. Don't quote me on the date, but I do know it's before Halloween. Ohio State takes a trip to Eugene, Autzen Stadium, for the first time in a long time. And I think in that game, regardless of the outcome, you're going to get to see what Oregon is truly made of. You're going to get to see exactly if Oregon is ready, not for Big Ten play, but to be one of the top teams immediately in the Big Ten. If Ohio State loses, y'all tap into Locked On Buckeyes. That live postcast will be a little animated. I believe I did one after Ohio State lost to Oregon in 2021. Just straight frustration. I mean, it was bad. It was bad. Because I'm sitting here watching the game, and I see, well, Zach Harrison didn't do this. He didn't do it again. And they were just taking advantage of the same mistake over and over and over. And the play calling was a little wacky. The team could not set the edge for anything. And I'm sitting here thinking, what's going on? Well, Oregon's a good football program. Oregon is doing a lot of things right. They're building a team for the moment. And now you got a coach that's doing a lot of good things there. That game in October, circle it, figure it out where it is, circle it, find the network. It has not been announced yet. I hope it's not Fox. I don't want it to be a 12 noon kickoff game. If it is a Fox game, put that bad boy on prime time. Make the people over there in Eugene happy. Also make me happy because I would prefer a primetime game for that matchup. But yeah, both of these programs can be, it wouldn't shock me. Literally, it would not shock me at all if Oregon and Washington both won a Big Ten Conference championship within the first 5 years of them being in the conference. I do think Washington is going to be really good, consistently good. I think Oregon can stay at this level and then even go up a level here really soon. But that game, I think it's October 12th. I haven't even looked at it on the show because I didn't look it up quickly, but I believe it's October 12th. Circle it. Get your popcorn ready.
Oh, man.
Helmets will be flying. It'll be a lot of fun, and it's going to be sad that Herb Street will not be on the call of that. He cannot be because I really wish. I feel like that's a Herb Street and Fowler game. Gus and Joel are good, but I think Herbie, his itch to call Buckeyes games is still there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially when you got the quarterback play, man. I mean, yeah, give us exactly all that we want up on there. I mean, what a heck of a start of it, because the fact that you're already challenging the new guy, a Big 12 quarterback in Dylan Gabriel, to go in and play against Ohio State, that's going to be definitely one that's a great challenge to take on. So now getting into the Buckeyes talk from here. The thing I've always broke down about Ohio State, because I've always loved this program, even from the times when they had Urban Meyer and even before that. And they've developed and built a lot of great products, from running backs to quarterback to even wide receivers. And even as recent with the Chris Olaves, the Emeka Egbukas, and the Marvin Harrison Juniors of the world. But the serious question is, because this year it looks different. Now, Ryan Day, I think this is the year for him to prove it. There's no Jim Harbaugh in Michigan. You got Sharon Moore. Now, initially, you had a Bill O'Brien to be the offensive coordinator before he took that Boston College job. Now, in comes Chip Kelly. It's a different look of it. And I'll be honest, I didn't think Kyle McCord was that bad. I just didn't think he was there yet. There was a little more adjustment. There was a little bit more play he needed to sharpen his skill at quarterback. But when you evaluate this year, how important does this have to be for Ohio State and for Ryan Day to finally take that leap in the Big Ten, and even when we've got a 12-team playoff expansion?
So the playoff actually helps Ryan Day in this year specifically, because Ryan Day this could be a season where, I want to say something I don't want to happen. Ohio State loses to Michigan. Ohio State does not win the Big Ten and still makes the playoff. You're scratching your head like, hey, man, so you haven't beat Michigan since 2019. You haven't won the Big Ten since 2020. You're only making the playoff because it's an expanded playoff. What has happened to Ohio State football? Now, I'm not all in on saying Ohio State will win the game against Michigan because I think that's a psychological game and a really physical game, and one of those that I even told someone recently. I don't know if Ohio State's psychologically over that mental hurdle yet. I know that they can talk about it, but I got to see it for my own eyes how they play the previous 11 games before I'll make my final prediction for that game. But man, this year's pivotal. It's very, very important. I believe it's Aaron Taylor who works for CBS Sports, and he made a comment saying if Ohio State does not win the Big Ten this year, Ryan Day's gone. And that's the first time I've heard that. Normally the focus is, and that's my focus too, the Michigan game. But you can lose that game because of who it is and how good you expect him to be and still keep your job. But if you don't win the Big Ten this year, it's one of those things that's a really bad look. And it's a thing. You don't go out and get Caleb Downs or Quinshon Judkins and Will Howard and Seth McLaughlin from Alabama. You don't go out there and get all these guys, and Will Kazmarek from Ohio, the Bobcats. You don't go out there and get all these guys if your goal is not to accomplish all three of your goals. The goals at Ohio State: beat Michigan, win the Big Ten, win the Natty. They haven't beat Michigan since 2019, haven't won the conference since 2020, haven't won the Natty in 10 years, which is a whole lot harder than the other two to do. But Ryan Day, you keep saying this. You keep talking about these are the goals. Why aren't they getting done? That's my question. Why in the world are they not getting done? Are you saying, okay, cool, it's because, well, we had the East and the West. That's gone. That's absolutely gone. So if you're saying it's because of the divisions, that's gone. That's no excuse. If you're saying it's because they have better players than you, okay, well, that shouldn't happen. You're Ohio State. Michigan should never have better players than you. Well, it's because our guys got hurt. Okay, your depth is a whole lot better at numerous positions than it has been. So throw all the excuses out. We don't care about excuses. We want results. And this year's very, very pivotal. I do think there's a reality for Ohio State, for Ryan Day, that Ohio State, if they happen to lose to Michigan and win the conference and win the Natty, that he keeps his job. But he's coaching for his job this year. You go 11-1, you lose to Michigan, you still make the conference championship game, you lose that, you happen to still make the playoff, and you're losing the playoff too, he might be up out of a job. Not because he's not a good coach, but because he's not living up to the standard that he says is Ohio State standard. Not what I say, not what former players say. It's what Ryan Day says. So yeah, this year is very, very pivotal, and he shouldn't need the expanded playoff to make the playoff. But if that's what's needed, go out there and win it. Run right through everybody and win it. Because if not, you could be up out of town.
Yeah, because I mean, that's going to be an interesting point from there. Because when I watched that Ohio State-Michigan game, I mean, Michigan, we knew, was on a mission. They were on a mission against many teams in the Big Ten, but they were on a mission against the NCAA as a whole. And sure enough, they were able to get the job done. But my big thing is like, in the Big Ten as a whole, I could see it where you're just losing to Michigan, which you can't get over, like you said, on that mental hump. You can't get past that. But I'm sure what may ignite the fire is if you lose to teams outside of Michigan, like a Michigan State. If you lost to a Michigan State or an Iowa, yeah, I'm having a little bit of an eyebrow raised, because I'm like, yeah, this should not happen. Like you even though you're playing against these teams and you face them multiple times, this should not happen. That should at the very least be the igniter. Like, yeah, you need to start getting better, or that's it. You're out of the job. But the interesting thing is, so out goes Kyle McCord, in comes Will Howard. The quarterback play is going to be a little bit different from here. I'll be fair with you. I felt like because of the reactions we've gotten from a lot of Ohio State fans, as I've said, I just didn't feel like Kyle McCord did get too much of that fair chance. Yes, there were mistakes he's made. Yes, there were some adjustments to his gameplay, he probably would be able to do better. But I didn't think he's terrible. And now he goes to Syracuse. He gets a little bit closer to home, which nothing wrong with that. But I think you're going to see something a little different. So now you bring in, I'd say, a pocket player in Will Howard. Do you see this offense be a little bit potentially different than what we got from the offense this past season?
Yeah, I do, for multiple reasons. I want to go outside in and come back to the quarterback on purpose just to kind of lay down the groundwork. Last year, you had one of the best Ohio State receivers I've ever seen in my lifetime.
Yep.
And there's been a lot of great receivers. One guy 20 years ago in Santonio Holmes does not get the amount of attention I think he should have gotten. He still needs to get, because at Ohio State, he was a dog. You had Marvin Harrison Jr., Egbuka got hurt, and then after that, you had Julian Fleming, who since transferred to Penn State, who you thought would be a bigger piece of the pie, but that man really had struggles catching the football. And so he's gone. Come back in it on the inside, Cade Stover, who was kind of your solid piece, your Iron Man, you may want to say, who battled a lot of injuries, got hurt, I think, again last year for a little bit, but played through injuries. Tight end's gone. So you're going to have a new tight end, not really sure who's going to start there. You got Egbuka still there, but on the outside, you got Jeremiah Smith, who's the number one receiver in the country, previously 2024 recruiting class. We're in the 2025 cycle. I keep trying to remember like years and how far we've come so far. But Jeremiah Smith's one of those guys that some have said he's the best high school receiver since Randy Moss. As you talk about how good people say that he is, guys that have been doing this for 20, 30, 40 years say he is that good. He is that kind of a prospect. He's a receiver. You got Cardell Tate, Brandon Ennis, Bryson Rogers, a lot of inexperience on the outside, but I do believe that talent, once you get past the Cupcakes, the Western Michigans, the Marshalls, the Akrons, beginning of the season, they're going to get into stride. But once you get a little bit closer, you're going to have a different offense, not just because of the outside, but because of the guys in the backfield. With Quinshawn Judkins and Trevion Henderson, there's going to be a lot of times on the field, you're going to have two running backs on the field at the same time. Where Ohio State, they may do 12 personnel, one running back, two tight ends, or they may do 21 personnel and they bring in a fullback and one tight end. Well, if it's 21 personnel now, it's Henderson and Judkins. The former 2022 SEC Freshman of the Year, Trevion Henderson, broke a Maurice Claret record his freshman year, to talk about how good he was that year. Those two guys in the backfield, if you get split backs and those two guys are there, you fake to one, go to the other, or you figure out some trickeration there with Chip Kelly, it's a straight nightmare. So all of that is to say the quarterback's going to be different too. You're correct. Kyle McCord got a lot of bad attention, a lot of bad analysis, as I call it poor analysis, as Nick Wright made some stupid comment about Caleb Williams recently. I said, hashtag poor analysis. It's the same thing with Kyle McCord. There was a lot of poor analysis out there with McCord, but Will Howard, he is not the best thrower of the football. He is not going to throw 4,500 passing yards, 50 passing touchdowns. He's not that guy. He's more mobile. He has won a Big 12 conference championship. I believe they beat TCU in that year. So he beat a really, really good football team that eventually was the national runner-up in that season. So he's done some good things. He's tested. But the receivers on the outside, even though they're inexperienced, a lot of them, they're really, really good based off the projections we have. The tight end position, that's one that's lacking. But those guys in the backfield are going to make, I believe, Will Howard's job a whole lot better. Some may say Devin Brown. I am off that train completely. Don't put me on. Don't try to put me on it. I'm hopping off if I'm happy to get on there. Julian Sand, a true freshman, transferred in from Alabama after Saban retired. Okay, cool. He is still a true freshman. Give me the experience guy. Give me the safe pick. Put Will Howard in there at quarterback and let that thing rock and roll. With Chip Kelly, he is running Ryan Day's offense, but I believe he's still going to use his own creativity and his maybe fresh version of the offense to let this thing flow like it needs to. So I know I said a lot there, just kind of breaking down the offense for Ohio State. The big question mark, can they block? Because, buddy, the O-line last year at Ohio State was not up to par. It has not been up to par really during most of Ryan Day's tenure, which is one knock on him as a head coach at Ohio State, where Urban Meyer demanded so many things from the O-line. Ryan Day might demand them, but Urban got results. Ryan Day has not got the same results. So if they figure the O-line out, this offense could be a lot of fun to watch, and I think it will be.
Yeah, and and that's what I'm curious about too, because and I mean, you and I have watched it for a long time. Chip Kelly does love to run with his guys. Now, it might be challenging because the fact of when you look at a guy like Will Howard, I mean, his pocket presence, he likes to be comfortable in that pocket. But you could say it's a great deal of production when it comes to the run game, because
Yeah.
at least with Judkins and Henderson, I can get some really good ground and pound and some speed. And then in the end, like as long as Will Howard, he's distributing those accurate throws as I've seen him play it in Kansas State, that could definitely go real well hand in hand. You may not get the mobile quarterback that can scramble out and open space, but I could get a guy that could at the very least sling it to give me 15, 20 plus yards, midfield, downfield, however that, Chip Kelly would decide to run on it. And it's a great thing you mentioned a point on the O-line, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought the other thing that I felt was a little of a concern was that midfield defense, because there was a time where they started kind of losing miscommunication from some of those midfield plays. When I watched that Michigan game, I was like, who is not executing in that midfield? I'm a little worried here. And now again, they lost Tommy Eichenberg now to the draft. And again, I'm looking at the linebackers. I mean, the secondaries will be fine. But I think you kind of got to get a little more protection up on that midfield. Am I right?
Linebackers was, I believe you're talking about the linebackers, mentioning Eichenberg.
Yep.
That has been a weakness of Ohio State since 2020. 2019, they had a lot, like Pete Werner was there. Not Zach Harrison. Malik Harrison was there, played in the NFL. Both of those guys are in the NFL. At least I think Harrison's still there. And so they had a lot of guys that were there. 2020 saw a little bit of a drop off. Honestly, 2020, the best linebacker to me was a guy that was a 6th-year guy who had battled a lot of injuries, and Justin Hilliard. If he was not an injury, a guy that got hurt a lot, he would have been a draft pick in that 2021 draft. But 2021, linebackers were bad, like really, really bad. 2022 linebacker play was a whole lot more. But the difference between 2022 and 2023, the aggressiveness from Eichenberg and Chambers and Simon we saw in 23, Jim Knowles did not take the same approach in 23. And so you may say, well, Eichenberg's numbers might be down, or his production might be a little bit different, or Chambers' numbers, and why is there some confusion? Well, they're not being asked to do the things that they do the best. Well, isn't that what coaches are supposed to do, to put guys in positions that they do things that the best in the defense, to make the defense the best they can be? Yes, now sometimes you may be asked to do something that's one of your weaknesses, but you got to work on that strength, baby. You got to figure this thing out. And so the Buckeyes linebackers, it's one of those things where the standard at Ohio State is so high. The linebacker play has not been as consistent as Ohio State fans believe it needs to be, and as I believe it needs to be. And so Eichenberg was good, solid player. Mm-hmm. Simon is still there. You got the other running a linebacker, they running a 4-2-5. Is either Sonny Styles, who's coming down from the safety spot to a linebacker, or CJ Hicks, a guy who's in year 3 who really hasn't played. So Simon's a leader. We know we're going to get from him. That other backer spot, if Styles is there, is he able to be physical enough? Is he able to quickly become comfortable being 4 to 5 yards out the line of scrimmage instead of being at the safety spot, which is a different depth, or being a nickel corner where you're still closer to the line of scrimmage, but more to the outside of the box? What can they figure out with the linebackers? Honestly, for the secondary, and I don't say this just to say it, I have no issues. I have no complaints. I got no problems. You got Burke on one side. He's a future first-round pick. You got Igman Olsen on the other. He's going to get drafted. You got Jordan Hancock at nickel. He is going to get drafted. And then you got Caleb Downs, who might be the best player on the team, transferring in from Alabama, a former SEC freshman of the year from last year. And then you got Lathan Ransom, who I believe is entering his 5th year, really battled 2 crazy injuries that knocked him out of both years. I got no issues with the secondary. It's just the linebackers. And really, it's just one linebacker spot, not 2. If they figure that bad boy out, the Buckeyes might have a top 3 defense in the country.
Oh, yeah, and they would make some serious noise even throughout, not just in the Big Ten, but even from like when you look at the college football playoffs. I mean, that puppy, you get that figured out, Ohio State will definitely be a force to be reckoned with because that'll be something that'll be interesting, and I think that is what will help with solidifying with the question up on Ryan Day. So outside looking in the 12-team playoff, man, I mean, I'm getting a mixture. I'm getting excited about this because I got the Ohio States. I got the Penn States. I've got, I've had Ole Miss when we've looked at the transfer portal. I mean, to be honest with you, I would move the transfer portal at a different time. I'm not doing this in the middle of like that or close to the ending of that season when we got the playoff. I would rather finish everything up, get the offseason, make it more of an offseason priority, and then we can understand who will all be coming in spring camp, in spring football. So when you look at the 12-team playoff, there are more chances for many teams, and even from the Power Five, and even maybe one or two of the FBS schools, that could very much be an interesting story going into this thing. But I think if we have this 12 team, do you think this is more than enough for a lot of these teams to be competitive, to work on, their product, and at the same time, like, or could there be more room for maybe potentially more teams? Do you think this is more than enough? Because I think it is. I think 12 teams, that's more than enough for me. But it builds the competition around for all of these programs and all these conferences.
So I think they don't need to expand to 12. I think 12, if you're using the expanded playoff to be more competitive, I'm questioning why do you need this to be more competitive? Because one, in college football, the goal is to go, well, any sport, the goal is to go undefeated. But this sport, more than maybe any other sport, you almost need to go undefeated, even in a 4-team format, to be able to be in the national championship or be in the running to win it in any given season. And I'm going somewhere with this. I don't believe there are 12 teams that can win the national championship.
Yeah.
I think once you get to November, you may say there may be 12, like even 12 is a very large number for at the beginning of November to say, hey, there's 12 teams that go in the natty, and all of a sudden somebody falls. You might get 6 in a good year, that can win it. But most of the time, there's maybe 3 teams, maybe 4, and that fourth is even stretching it. I think with a 12-team format, okay, the fan in me, I'm looking forward to watching more football, more college football.
Yeah.
Also, the fan in me is cringing because we're going to get 14-team playoff, potentially, not officially, in a couple years. Whenever we get the Super League out here, it wouldn't shock me if it was a 16-team playoff and there was no buys. I don't really like the expansion. I never have. I don't like the committee. I think the committee is stupid. I think the committee is really doing this thing for the money. I mean, of course, the sports are more about money than it ever has been. And I think the committee is really doing a lot of this stuff for drama leading up to the final ranking. It doesn't make any sense. I wasn't going to say this, but I don't really care right now. Like, you got me on the expansion, which is one of those things that really irritates me about this sport. Expanding things with this committee, it's just going to make the sport even more confusing, even more crazier, make you scratch your head saying, how did that team get in? You mentioned Ole Miss. You mentioned Penn State. Most people have not believed either one of those two programs are some of the top 5 teams in the country at the end of the regular season. Most people have not. If you do great after the conference championship weekend, when neither one is played, you may say, well, they're not one of the top 4 teams. Now, granted, I do think both teams will make the playoff this year. At the same time, I still don't think they have a shot to win it. And we're in the preseason where a lot more is out there. We have a lot of crazier opinions and we're speculating about a lot of things. I don't think either one's going to win it. I still think now there's going to be one team that's a brand that's going to emerge. I don't think it's Penn State's year. I don't trust Drew Aller. I don't think it's Ole Miss's year. You mentioned the transfers. It's kind of like the one and done in college basketball you mentioned earlier.
Yep.
You keep getting all these transfers. You're kind of saying we're not going to win this year because it's very, 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 very hard to get everybody to come into your system, forget what they learned previously with the playbook, learn your playbook, learn your way of things. Oh, yeah, figure out everything in the classroom. Buddy, that's really, really hard. And
Yeah.
so the expanded playoff, it's all about money. I'm actually glad that with the expanded playoff, we get TNT to broadcast college football games because they do great with the NBA. What I watch them do with the NHL, they do a great job there. Do a great job with Major League Baseball. And I hope we get the very casual kind of, not so much bar-like conversations, but because the words, you can't say those same words on TV. But I really hope we get that same casual conversation with the pregame and the halftime and the postgame, whoever it may be. The one request I have is TNT, go get David Pollock. I miss him on ESPN. I miss him on game day. Go get David Pollock. He's in the video game, and I'm very glad. But get him on TNT because I believe he needs to be on college football coverage somewhere. And actually, that format works well for him. It's not as structured. He does talk a lot like I am. I am very long-winded. I host a solo show, multiple solo shows. But yeah, man, the expansion's stupid. It's very, very dumb.
Yeah, it's so funny you mentioned that name because you know what? I absolutely love the guy. And you know what's funny is like, I mean, we got Joel Klatt and Fox, but you bring this guy in at TNT, good God, the ratings and the entertainment would be out of this world because it's like it's what makes the experiences of it all a lot better. And that I'm all for that. I'm all about make the experience better, make it more worthwhile for college football fans like you and I to really just sit, enjoy it, watch it on television, you know, or even being there in the campuses where you're out there on the fields. Like, I mean, that's what we should be working towards. And it's like I said, get a CEO in, get some structure in this whole thing, figure this thing out, and then that way we'll have a silver lining of some sense into what college football, what their future is really going to be a lot about. Jay, appreciate you bringing up on your time, man. Where can people follow you to finding everything up on college football and even for those Ohio State Buckeyes?
Appreciate it, my man. It's been fun the entire time. Follow me on X or Twitter, whatever we're going to call it nowadays, at jsteven07. I'm actually also on Threads. I was tweeting, or whatever you want to call it, posting there more a day ago. Same thing, at jsteven07. Locked on Buckeyes, daily podcast, Monday through Friday. Throughout the summer will be probably more of a 4-day show, Monday through Thursday, just kind of taking a little bit of a break during the offseason. However, it's a show we talk Ohio State football. Going to filter in some Big Ten conversations. Going to take your questions as well, and really try to build up to what I think is going to be a special Ohio State football season. Because I think Ryan Day realizes the things that not only I am saying, a lot of people are saying. This year could be the final year for him at Ohio State.
Yeah.
And if he does not figure things out, if they have and you mentioned Michigan State earlier, 2015, if they have a letdown against Michigan State middle of the season where they lay an egg like Ohio State did against Michigan State, where they should have won, realistically could have won back-to-back national championships, well, he might be finding himself walking out the doors. Ohio State has a new AD this year. The new AD does not want his football coach to really have issues beating a team like Michigan State, who I don't think is going to be one of the double-digit win teams in the sport this year. But yeah, Twitter at jsteven07. Appreciate the time, and I'm done talking. I talk so much.
Well, I will tell you, you make a great point about that. That'll be a big stinger because here's the thing. You didn't lose to Mel Tucker. You lost to a different coach there at Michigan State. So that'd be the biggest stinger right there for Ryan Day if that becomes the case. It's one thing if you lost to Mel Tucker and then you're like, well, yeah, he laid the egg up on there. But that's worse if you got a different coach up there. Yeah. And believe me, this is my goal before the college football season. I do plan to get more and more people in here that cover a lot of college football because I'm just that excited for what this new year is going to really be like. And like I said, more adjustments, more making it more consistent and structurized. I think that'll make it a lot worthwhile. But appreciate your time, Jay. Enjoy the rest of the week, man, and we will see you soon, especially with the new college football season kicking off. Take care, my friend.
My friend, I enjoyed it. Go Bucks.
Let's go. Yeah, this